Uh, but guys, no, thank you very much for jumping on with me. And Kirsty, again, I know that you and I met first and really have had some great dialogue about the challenges against the success of the family. And I've been coining the phrase, the success of the American family. But let's face it, this conversation might as well be global.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And yeah, so tell me, I had one question right off the bat, and then I was going to dive into a little intro that you sent me, Kirsty. But how did you guys meet? I don't know if I ever heard that story.
Go ahead.
Well,
No, it's nothing nefarious. It was all innocent and very organic. Yeah.
Right.
yeah, no, we met at a conference in Phoenix here in the US, and that was like 5.5 years ago, something like that. It was just both innocent. We were just both attending the same conference. And so, yeah, we just connected with everybody else in the group. And then everybody kind of was on a Facebook group. We were all thrown into it. And then we just didn't talk for 6 months. And in that time, I'd put a task into the group telling everybody to do stuff. It was kind of a bit like, it was a video, like I'm making a video, I'm going to tag these people, and then they have to make a video, and so on.
It's kind of like that old ice bucket challenge thing where you nominate 3 of your friends, and it's like, and so she did that.
Yeah, so I did that. And as I say, that was about 6 months later since I just, said hi. And then I think, you messaged me to tell me why you couldn't do it. You were just like, I'm sorry, got a lot of shit going on in my life right now. And
it was like a goofy, make a goofy video, because we were at a public speaking conference. And so we basically challenged each other with different public speaking challenges. And I responded back basically saying, I'd normally play, I'd be a goofball and make an ass of myself, but I'm not up to it today. And I was right as my the peak of my divorce was kind of hitting full speed, and it was like, this is just not good timing for me to be in a good place to have a fun video. So she responded with, "Oh, what's up?" And I was like, well, kind of all the bad stuff that goes with it. And she responded back that she had gone through a divorce and some of that. And so we just purely started off. There was no it just sort of started just conversationally, and then the conversations grew and grew until eventually she said, when you get done with your 10 bad dates, give me a call. And I was like, what do you mean 10 bad dates? She's like, well,
rebound.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that person.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay. Well, I was pretty focused on being a dad, and I'm a small business owner, so I wasn't really in the place. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was just trying to focus on keeping the home front with my kiddos, okay. And then we just kept talking until eventually a few months later, she said, I'm going to come down and visit you. And so that's kind of how it all started. Yeah.
You made that sound like it was all me.
It was.
It wasn't. But anyway, whatever. I'll let you.
Kirsty, not only did he make it sound like it was all you. Oh, wait a minute, my microphone's all the way over here. You guys can't even hear me. That ought to be better. Sorry. Not only did he make it sound like it was all you, he made it sound pretty accurate. I mean, you're pretty good, John. Hey guys, let me dive into a little bit about why we're talking here on the Deadbeat Chronicles. Joe Gleason and Kirstey Jane are a couple of long distance relationship, are in a couple. You're in a couple. I can't read for anything. Is this Canadian, Kirsty?
It's worse. It's English and Canadian.
Oh my God! Here I am, the supposed guy with good grammar, right out the window. Joe and Kirstey are a couple in a long distance relationship between the U.S. and Canada that has been going on strong for 5 years. They're both divorced. They're a blended family with 5 teenagers between them, and have both had their experiences in court systems, lawyers, mediation, and co-parenting. Toxicity and narcissism come along with that, unfortunately. They're here to share about life on the other side of emotional apocalypse. Joe is a financial professional, and Kirstey is a creative who now runs her own business, teaching people how to get out of their emotions and triggers to be leaders, parents, and partners. Guys, it's perfect. And again, Kirstey, our first couple of conversations were right along that. Let me ask kind of this first question here. Coming from previous marriages, was there any mutual support from any was there any mutual respect from your respective ex-wives, ex-husbands to continuing on with your future relationships, and again, bringing new parents in front of their kids? Was there any support on that? And your smiles are both telling me.
I'll let you go first.
It's a fair question. I mean,
let's see. How do I end? Okay, so my mom always taught me if you don't have anything nice to say, to not say anything at all. So I will let her answer. No, my ex has not even met Kirstey, and it's been going on 5 years. So I have my kids full time. We just haven't really. They've been in the same place at the same time, like my son's high school graduation, but it's just my separation, then divorce, and then the whole co-parenting thing. It's been such a challenge, I guess I'll say, that a supportive, cooperative, co-parenting, like blended family and meeting exes, it just hasn't been the case on my side.
No, and I think many can relate. Many, unfortunately, can relate. And what, this may be a very broad question, but what do you figure is the biggest single, if there's such a thing, the biggest single contributor to that animosity in breakups, in divorces? What is it? Mechanism? Is it organic? Is it society? I suppose I just answered the question, but in your guys' opinion, what's kind of that main driving force right now?
I would, on her side though, like I have met her ex. We get along cordially. We don't meet out for beers or happy hour or anything like that. But we can be around each other and it's not awkward or weird. It's just we're there for the kids, her kids, and but in terms of answering your next question, just of what causes all that, I think a lot of it's just the personality and willingness of the ex, and then the people that are in the relationship. So for me, it works fine when me and her ex, we both are there for the kids. But when you've got someone who's not as interested in having a relationship, whether it be for the kids or the co-parenting relationship, then I think that's where things can break down. And so that's just, you can't control people. So some people are going to be willing to do it and some people won't. It's unfortunate for the kids, but it's part of it.
I think it speaks volumes in terms of, as a mom, if my kids are with their dad, I want to know who else is in their life, because I'm a mom who cares about my kids and the influences that are in their life. So just like I might want to meet a teacher of theirs or a parent of a kid that they're hanging out with, that's important and that's healthy to me. So to not want or to not care who your kids are mixing with, I think that kind of shows an awful lot about how you are as a parent. It hasn't been reciprocated on the other end. Like, I mean, I could be a axe murderer and I've been hanging out with his kids for 5 years. And so I don't know how that, what that says, but as a parent of 3 children, I would want to know who they're hanging out with. And that hasn't happened at all. So on your side.
Right.
Yeah.
In her relationship, the kids don't live with her. So in her relationships, I've not met any of my ex's new boyfriends, but or partners, but my kids don't live with her. So it's not really the same impact as I think it would be for Kirstey to meet or her to meet Kirstey. So.
Right. And you almost kind of expressed, you've got a couple of specific dynamics, and there are so many different models of the family, right? So many different models. And so how do we somehow appreciate all of these dynamics and have everyone embrace? Kirstey, you and I talked about personal responsibility in our last conversation. Personal responsibility, extreme ownership. I don't mean to coin, the title of Jocko Willink's book there, but I think it really matters. And I was going to ask this next question. How have your past experiences, the hurtful, the toxic experiences, helped you to bring positive leadership into the future with either your own families, your own kids, your relationship, colleagues, your friends, everybody?
I keep getting I always keep, I'm a ladies first guy, so she keeps making me answer
Oh,
first.
I just don't want to take over. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me personally, I think ultimately, if you put your kids first, your kids are always your first priority. Even if you're splitting with your ex because you don't get along anymore, you can't make it work. But despite that, that's never the kids' issue. It's not the kids' problem. So when you put the kids first, you have to acknowledge they have a mom and a dad. And so, it's not in their interest that I would make their dad a scapegoat or speak ill of him or not let them see him or anything like that. So as much as it might pain me to want to hang out with him or him and his partner or whatever, that's not their problem. Like, it's up to me to facilitate that in any way I can. Luckily, I can be in their presence and we're all cool and it's not a big deal. But I think that's ultimately what it is. I mean, if you put your kid first or kids first, I think that's like the most important thing you can do, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a divorce, whether it's the court systems, like, it doesn't matter what it is. If the kids are always at the front of both of your, both of your priorities, then that will always come first. I keep repeating myself and saying the same thing, but the kids just have to come first. And as long as that's your first priority, then it doesn't really matter of anything outside that. If you want to, get mad at your ex-spouse or you have a real problem with them, sure, go deal with it. But you don't deal with it around the kids. It's separate because you don't want them turning that into a reflection of who their other parent is. You don't want to destroy the parent-child relationship in any way. That's just my...
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, but there's only so much you can encourage that type of behavior. And when you don't have support from the other person, then you just do your best to support your kids and try to be as much of a good influence as you can. I've always told my kids, and not specifically about their parent or their mom or whatever, I've always just said there's two different kind of people in your life. There's people that you want to be like, and then there's people that you don't want to be like. So take both as a lesson. And unfortunately, if one is your parent, then that's more difficult, but it's reality too. And so it unfortunately has been their experience and part of the dynamic. But yeah, for sure that it's not about our breakup or us being together, or even our disagreements between us. Like, we put our kids first. One of the examples of that is that we have a long distance relationship still. If we were being completely selfish, we would have uprooted one side or the other and taken them. But we realized that our kids have friends and lives here and co-parents and all that sort of other outside influence and outside life that we've put ourselves, we put our kids first, even in terms of our relationship. So it's not just with exes; it's pretty much with other dynamics as well.
Yeah. No, I Kirstey, in our previous conversation, we talked a little bit about the selfish side of things, the narcissist and the narcissistic side of things, and the parent alienation side of things. I would like to think that from what you guys are both telling me, that you personally, it doesn't seem like are seeing a lot of parent alienation, but I know, Kirstey, you've said that people you've talked with in the past suffer greatly from it. So I get my question would be, and I just really thought of this. In your opinion, what are the causes of narcissism? And not only can they be countered, but can someone that was once a narcissist come the other way? And then what happens with the kids that were in the middle of that narcissist argumentative split? And I don't even mean to say that narcissist is on just one side. God forbid it's double-sided, it's on two, and then the kids really get ripped up, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So again, just back to the question. I mean, what's the cause? What's the cause? How do we fix it?
We've talked about this a lot. I was raised by a single mom who I do believe truly did struggle or does struggle with narcissism. And that had massive effects on me growing up. And it's probably taken a good part of 30 years to come to terms with that. And so that then became my core thing as a parent, which was when I have kids, I will never, ever put my kids through what I experienced. So I've always been incredibly mindful of that. And I also went into marriage thinking that I was going to be married forever. I don't know anyone that doesn't think that, but I was always like, if it never pans out, if it doesn't pan out, then if there is a breakup, then my kids must always come first, and whoever I'm with must also agree to that. So when I was going through my own divorce, I was like, I know this is difficult for both of us. I know we've got stuff that we need to figure out, and it's not going to be pretty, but no matter what happens, the kids must come first. And that was difficult for me a little bit because my ex-husband hadn't been through that. He knew the effects it had on me, obviously, as a person, because he knew me, and how my own mother, like how that panned out for me. So he knew it, but he didn't truly know it because he'd never experienced it. He had a very healthy upbringing. So in that respect, I do believe that, when you become a victim of some kind of traumatic experience, you will always have the choice of, do I remain a victim? Do I become a complete recluse, or do I now go and role play out that same behavior on somebody else? And I think it's, as a child, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know the distinction. But I think if everybody around you is enabling the fact that you're a victim, because I could say, I'm this way because of what happened to me. If I choose to go through life like that, then that's always going to be my excuse. And I'm always going to be, serving out my reactions, my triggers and everything to everybody else. And that's what creates that kind of perpetuating victimhood that actually ends up hurting other people. And then you carry that through to your kids and so on. And when I realized that that was happening to me as a child, I just made a decision, like, the buck stops with me. Like, that's it. I'll let Joe speak for himself and through his own experiences and stuff. But one of the questions that we've always said is, for some of the stuff that we've both been through when we were younger and growing up, it's weird how we both decided to almost overcompensate. We've become highly aware of when, sort of narcissists or, people that are very toxic, like I can just instantly pinpoint it. It's just immediate. I'm like, oh, and so my barriers go up, and I kind of feel like I know, who to stay away from and not to give too much and so on. Like, that's very apparent to me. I feel like for Joe, that happened a lot later in your life. And so when we got into our relationship, I was like, oh, there's some signs you should probably like look out for right now. And that's just been a really steep learning curve for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Same thing. You get married thinking you're going to be married forever. And, some of the signs where it's like the frog in water or the lobster that's in water, whatever terrible metaphor that is, right? It's like, you start the slow crescendo of heat, and then you eventually, and that was kind of what happened over a period of time. I didn't realize at all initially, and then over time you just get more and more aware of it, and the ability to sort of acquiesce and like just always give in and all that stuff. It just gets where you're like, at some point in your life, you're like, I just like, when am I ever going to be right in any of this? Like, it just, so, and then lack of willingness of trying, but everything works out for the best. I'm not, I'm trying to be more, supportive of my kids not having those types of relationships from my experiences. I think everything happens for a reason, so that we went through what we went through so that we could help our kids identify it, and others, maybe other friends, other family members, whatever, podcast listeners, for just anyone that as you take the bad and you flip it into good, and as a life experience and not a reason to become a victim. So that, as she was saying, like, we could just sit around and go, no, people are always going to be like this. And the fact of the matter is, not everyone is that way. And if you do the work and then go attract what you want instead of what you want to stay away from, that's what we've been able to fortunately do.
Great. And I congratulate you both on not only finding that dialogue between yourselves, but continuing it on. Kirstey, you were talking a few minutes ago about continually talking about things and having these conversations. I think we've halted on having so many conversations for so many decades, not years, decades. And we're really seeing the result. Our birth rate here in marriage rate and birth rate here in America has gone down. It's falling. And a piece of news that came out not too long ago, relevant here. We're here in the middle of April 2023. The David's Bridal released, they laid off about 10,000 people and they filed bankruptcy. And the main reasoning was not intermanagement or funds or anything like that. It was just simply they don't have the numbers coming in the door. And at once they claimed they were putting the gowns on 1 out of 5 brides in the country. So that's just a signal. It doesn't sound like a good one. It doesn't sound economic. It sounds very related to marriage and marriage alone. So
yeah, especially when you consider from a demographic standpoint, we had the boomers, which is probably when I don't know the whole David's Bridal backstory, but my presumption is they became a big company during the phase of life when the boomers were all getting married, and then we're Gen Xers, so kind of held on to their glory with maybe boomers' second marriages, and then as the Xers were getting married. But now you look at the millennials, who are just as big of a generation as, if not bigger than the boomers. I would argue, to your point, that it's because they're choosing not to get married, because that generation, in terms of numbers, is as big as the boomers, if not bigger. So there should be, if the core belief of getting married was the same as it was a couple generations ago, and even as recent as our generation, you would see that trend where the sheer numbers wouldn't be what's falling off. So I would agree with you that your premise that just the whole institution of marriage and people wanting to get married and have kids, there's a shift in that.
I do agree with you. Unfortunately, and I think having conversations at the grassroots levels, I don't know what kind of power we've got to shift entertainment and social media, and now we're rolling right into AI.
Right.
I mean, if there was ever a lack of communication through technology increased in that, with technology was supposed to increase the convenience for communication, and we're seeing that's not the case. Well, there's so much misinterpretation going on. What's going to happen when AI really takes hold? It probably already has, but I mean, what are you guys feeling on the AI front?
They're going to take over lawyers' jobs.
Yeah.
Won't go to court anymore because it'll just be done by AI robots deciding who's right and wrong according to statistics. Who knows? Like that sounds terrifying to me.
I think we don't even know what we don't even know about AI yet. Mm-hmm. I think just like somebody couldn't foretell what the impact of the internet was going to be before the internet, I think it's the same thing with AI. Is that we are going to see massive shifts in all kinds of ways that things get done for both good and bad. And the idea or the hope is to try to keep as much of the bad at bay and leverage the good, because it's just a benign tool, but how it gets used in anything is going to be up to we, the people, and society across the world. So hopefully but you already see it with these guys, right? The cell phones. Kids today interact with each other differently than our generation. Their comfort level will just going up, and even like ordering food at a drive-through or they do the DoorDash kind of thing, and they just leave it at the door, rather than, for me, I just go to the restaurant and go get it. But kids today are more apt to just use technology to have this like almost no or very little human interaction just to get their goods and services. Amazon, DoorDash, things like that. They don't want to deal with people. Whereas me, I'm a people person. I'm like, I'd rather go talk to a human than deal with technology. I hate pressing 1 and 2. Just get me right to 0 so I can talk to someone, right? So
yeah,
that's true. Actually, I think in terms of how people communicate, like my kids in their relationships, it's like they'll text stuff to each other, or we're connected by headphones. So
we're high tech.
The old wire.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's the things that don't get said more than anything, because we make so many assumptions. You get a text and, you can't read the tone of it. I mean, we know this more than anyone because a lot of our communication is through text, because we can't be on the phone all day long, but we're constantly texting, and we only talk when we've both got time to do it, So we know that more than anyone, but I watch it with my kids. It's like they think so much, but they don't say it. or they say the most inappropriate things over text because they don't have someone in front of their face. If they want someone to go on a date with them, they don't have to literally walk up and go, hey, I really like you. Do you want to come out with me sometime? I mean, that would never happen. It's just, oh, I'll send you a selfie. I'm being bland there, but I'll send you a picture, and if you like me, but then they talk,
or swipe left or swipe right,
but then they say all this stuff online, and then we see them out in the street, and it's like, oh, isn't that person that you're friends with? And they run a mile. They don't actually want to say hello to them in person.
Right.
And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, this is your classmate from school that you talk to on your Snapchat. You won't even say hi to them when you walk in the classroom, and you're like this, like hiding. It's ridiculous. So that really concerns me.
And let's face it, kids, and we were the same way, we're all shy by nature.
Yeah.
For technology to drive us further away from human interaction type communication, facial I don't want to say recognition, but expression, facial expressions, and just eye movement and body movement and everything. It's what do they say? It's something like the larger percentage of how we communicate with each other.
Sure.
Only 7% of communication is actual words.
Maybe that's why people don't listen to me. I talk too much.
Me too,
but,
buddy.
maybe I had to learn and just sit at a table and be like, move my shoulders back and forth like this. Like
Raise your eyebrow
more. Come on.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of hit on the court systems a little bit. In your guys' opinion, what are some of the most destructive things, destructive movements, entities, elements in our society today, and destructive to the family, destructive to us raising our kids into successful relationships?
I think part of it is just the breakdown of the importance, or let me do it the other way, how easy it is to get divorced. Like if people just get into an argument, that's it, I just want to get out. Like, so part of it, like my grandparents, they were married for 60 plus years and they just never considered divorce. And I get that there's toxic relationships and you need to get out of them, and nobody should stay in a relationship but there are relationships where people are given in too soon, or that they have, they didn't discuss or have good communication skills in the beginning to sort of build that foundation for the duration of so like if you have a different philosophy about whether or not you have kids, or how you spend money, or even sort of intimate aspects of marriage. Like some people don't think that you discuss that. And I think that sort of communication stuff that we were just talking about with cell phones and technology parlays into the success of not only marriages, but overall relationships, because we're not having we don't have a system or a way to facilitate open, honest communication. So part of it is a system of people that are offended all the time, or you can't talk about this. You can't talk about that. Well, why can't you? I can talk to her about anything, even if it's difficult. And we have a mechanism for that, and we have a way that we go about that makes it so that we can have those difficult conversations, even though we don't necessarily want to have them, but we can be unconditional and completely candid with each other, but in a loving sort of way that knows that you're safe to communicate and that you aren't going to just be yelled at or abandoned or any of those things, right? And so, I would say some of it's societal, some of it's technological. I mean, in terms of courts, I'm not convinced that they're all about like, hey, what's best for the kids and having mom and dad together. I think they're so stuck on like rules and regs that they're not necessarily, in my experience anyway, they were not seeing some very clear issues, in my opinion, that just got glossed over, even when the kids were saying like, hey, this is the issue. And because of kind of the way things are, can't speak for the whole country, but here in Arizona, things are not necessarily geared for dad's rights. They're more, mom's always right, dad's wrong. And again, this might sound like sour grapes on my part, but I agree. Totally. I'm being as fair as I can be without sounding like a sour grapes guy. And so like, I think some of it could be systemic with the court system. It would have been nice to have more support legally, instead of being so many layers to answer that question. And so, we have our hands full. We have our cards stacked against us. But I think with communication and with education, that there's ways to kind of rectify all of this, like your podcast, for example.
I think there's two things. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You first.
No, to me, I think I agree with everything that Joe just said. I do think the court system here is totally weighted in the favor of the mom, but it doesn't look at whether that's even fair or not, or what role the mom has. It's just like, I was shocked at some of the stuff that happened. I I'm mad and angry and everything. But the two main things for me, I think, is because of the way society is related to everything that you just talked about, the speed of everything. The instant gratification is so fast that nobody has any staying power anymore to see things through the end. They just give up so fast. They don't stop and think, or they don't take time to go away and breathe after they're wound up. They're making emotional decisions while they're in that fight or flight mode. And I think the biggest thing of all, which is also the hardest thing that we're all guilty of, is we don't listen enough. We're so ready to tell our story or complain or attack or react. But I think when you really stop and just, for the benefit of your relationship, whoever it's with, I think it's understanding that the fight that you have in you, or the disagreement that you have, is not about the person that's in front of you, who you obviously love very much, if that's your partner or your kids. It's the entity that is the relationship between you. And so instead of, you can look at the person in front of you and say, I love this person, but I don't understand why they're so annoying and why this isn't working and why I'm so mad.
Why'd you look
really?
at me?
I have no idea. I have no idea who I'm talking about. But what it is, it's more about my focus. And for some people, I know that, people will say, that believe in God, will say, put God first. And so not everybody believes in God. So I'm just going to take the religion side out of it. But it's the same principle. It's like you put your relationship first. So the relationship is the entity in between you. And if you can focus on what am I putting into that relationship and what am I taking out of it, that's where you fix the relationship. It's not trying to change the person that's sitting across from you. It's not expecting them to do stuff. It's like, when I show up to that relationship every single day, what am I putting into it and what's there for me to take back out? Because we've got two methods, right? It's everything that we put out and it's everything we allow. So I could be the best person at depositing things into the relationship and going, I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything they asked for. I'm doing all this stuff. It's all great. Yeah, I might be. But the other channel is what am I allowing? If I'm allowing myself to show up when there's nothing there for me, I'm teaching that other person that it's okay for me to come to that relationship when there's nothing in it. And so I'm just constantly enabling and sustaining a relationship that doesn't serve me. And I just still keep showing up and I still keep depositing and there's still nothing there for me. And the longer I stay there and the longer I don't have those difficult conversations to make it right, I'm the one that gets shortchanged. And over time, that turns into resentment. And then I'll start acting out because now I've got resentment sitting in there along with everything else. Then that's going to trigger me. And so then that's when I start reacting rather than responding. So every tiny little thing that the other person does is going to send me through the roof. And now my behavior is becoming unacceptable. And so then I'm not putting anything into the relationship either as an animal allowance. So I'm getting walked over and I'm spitting out nails in there too, which is so this is how relationships will deteriorate. And I think if people would just focus on the fact that a relationship's like a bank account. It's about what I put in and what I take out. And, when I want to be heard, the first thing I need to do is listen. We can't settle and change and understand unless the other person that we're talking to feels heard. And that's the hardest thing in the world to do, because when you feel misunderstood yourself, all you want to do is like say your point of view. And we even did that this morning. We had a little bickering session about something and it was like, because it's frustrating. You're like, oh, why can't you hear me? But the point is, you just got to stop and listen. That's the biggest thing that anybody can do, is just stop and listen. And when the other person feels heard, the wind's taken out of their sails. You're in a different place to where you would have been if you kept talking. And now you've got the chance to, you may have understood something, you've allowed someone to calm down, you put them in a place where they will hear you, and it just allows and facilitates a whole other discussion that you might not have had if you were just constantly in a reactive state. So listening, that would be my biggest thing.
No, I couldn't align more. And while you were talking here in the last, 3-4 minutes there, I was thinking quite often, how do we interject this? That conversation doesn't have a college degree. That conversation doesn't have an acronym after the last name or some sort of big association. It is common sense. It's loving. It's got good, mature adult parental experience in it. So having that conversation at the school district level, and I mean it, in the school, talking in the classrooms or in a class. I'm not an educator. I'm not a creator of curriculum, and I don't mean to sound like that kind of expert, but we can start that conversation with the school districts, public or private or charter or otherwise, or homeschooling even. I mean, I don't know what the exact rules are for homeschooling. I know a lot of parents prefer that. Everything, but of all the things that seem, you kind of noted earlier, Joe, the ease to go run to the attorneys and or run to the breakup, run to, argument, and then that vehicle, I think, is designed on the way to divorce. I think the majority of the vehicles are all designed to do their best based on the principles playing victim. So the one that plays the victim the greatest is going to most likely win. Therefore, in order to play victim, you really have to accuse the other side. You have to characterize your ex-spouse, and then the kids are in the middle there. They see all that, and so if we can, and Kirstey, you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, if we can, and I do see, I'll use the word force. It seems to me that we're very much forcing, and by we, I mean our society, our systems, our court systems, whatever, we are forcing people, moms and dads, to act in a certain way that's not their natural character. We're forcing them to do things with their lifestyles and their finances that I'm not sure if I'm convinced is all necessary. I don't mean to be an accountant. We have this whole world of healthcare costs and all these costs and all these costs. Well, have someone go broke for about 1.5 to 2 years, just as an example, and have them survive through it, and then think, well, maybe it really doesn't cost that much, or go through some other kind of test or challenge. And I'm wondering if some of these exorbitant costs and how those costs are then leveraged against a custodial parent, excuse me. So you've got these vehicles that assist with that victim mentality. You have these vehicles that assist in this divide, aggravation, agitation, and it's all reactive. It's all reactive. So just for the sake of argument, what if we took all of these stories proactive? What if we wrote these soap opera dramas before anyone got married? What if we told them, even from a negative sense, I'd suggest, because we talk about being proactive and, hey, let's talk about personal responsibility and self-love and high self-esteem and mutual support for each other. We can, of course, let's lead with that. But how about telling some stories that are really hurtful and truthful? This isn't fantasy. Truthful stories, and not as this happened, this hurtful, oh, that person's bad. More so, hey, these are the bad examples. This is what has happened with American society, and splits in family in every economic area, in every location, and use those as cautionary tales.
For sure.
There's two things you just said there. One of them is when we go to get married, there is not a lawyer that sits down with us and says, well, hang on, before you do this, we just need to check through your contracts and figure out what you stand to lose, what you stand to gain before you get married to this person. You can just you can run away and go get married with Elvis. But when you want to get out of that marriage, well, then if you're the victim, and even worse, if you're the narcissistic victim, you don't think you've done anything wrong, because that's the nature of a narcissist. So you go to a lawyer, and the lawyers, how many people have ever gone to see a lawyer, paid them their $500 retainer or initial, consult fee or whatever it is, and the lawyers turn around at the end of it and said, oh, you know what? I think you should just go home and you guys should have a cup of coffee and sort this out. No, they're going to be like, oh, you're absolutely right. We're going to win. We're going to win. Now, those words
it's going to be so great.
Yeah, to a narcissist, hearing those words, that's all they care about. They just want to win. They have to come out on top. They have to have their perfect story defined and vilified. And so that's where it goes. And so for the poor person who's sitting at home going, well, I would just talk it out, or I wish we could figure this out. And, and I still love you and I love the kids, and let's try and do this and let's do everything the right way. That toxic person doesn't care. They just want to win. They want to nail you. They want to come out and go get on with their own life, and they'll do whatever it takes. So the whole law system is there for that person, which is why it seems so unfair,
And how do we switch that? Because we're talking about things very logically. Like I can imagine if we were talking to our own families under our own roofs, or potentially in a group that would be somewhat small, but you start getting into the larger groups and the organizations, the school districts, the governments, the court systems, and things like that. And those are big David and Goliath type examples, and everything's moving so fast. How do we change that? And those are the questions I'm starting to ask more and more. We're here in Las Vegas. We're starting to meet with the family court judges. We've got we're very grateful to have an audience with them and to get their feelings too. And also to talk with the lawyers and get that dynamic of, on the pendulum, the compassionate, yes, we need to do something about it. Maybe there's some reform in need, or over to the other side, full justification that all the moving parts are absolutely fine the way that they are, and the legal community doesn't have any responsibility whatsoever to somehow increase our marriage rates and and decrease our divorce rates. I mean, I don't see as how that industry wouldn't have a dog in the fight.
At this point, as we sit here today, and it's cool that you've got people that are listening, but as we sit here today across America and across North America and probably the world, if you're to the point where you're going to a lawyer, you're probably more than 50-50 done. Like, so it's not, at that point, you've already kind of jumped the shark, so to speak. So at least one of them, of the couple has. And so I think even looking at ways to prevent even getting to the point, like having better communication systems, having more dialogue, like you use the example of having some videos or something that kids watch as they're about to consider getting married. Like, what are your, I'm in the financial industry, so things that I see are, what are your money values? Because I see clients who are nearing retirement that they still don't agree. Like, one's a spender, one's a thrifty person. So then, so that creates stress and strife, right? And so whether it's about, like, are we going to raise our kids religious? Are we going to be more agnostic? Like, what are your views on all that? Do they need to go to Sunday school? No, I don't want them to go to Sunday school. Well, shouldn't you figure that out before you get married? Or while in marriage, do you have a mechanism or tool or strata, whatever you'd call it, to where you can have healthy conversations before it gets to the point where someone's out the door? And that's really what has been our what's kept us going and being successful, is that we have, Kirstey, when we were first together, we created this technique to where we have a way to just have that authentic communication with one another, and that we can be super upset, we can be right in it, and then pause, and we have a technique for that, and it helps us not get to the point where it's like, well, that's it, I'm out, like we can have an adult conversation without screaming and being ridiculous. Doesn't mean it's not passionate, but it's never gotten to the point where it's been like, well, I'm gonna, we're not legally married, so it's just, but breaking up, or if it's somebody who's married, like getting to the point where you get divorced. So I think getting to the point of the judicial, I don't know how much you really can ever ask them to cool it, because their whole revenue stream comes from the divorce, not from working it out. So there's a kind of a conflict of interest there. If we're really going to try and keep marriage and relationships going, especially ones with kids involved, I think it's more about prevention than it is, working through it, than it is getting to the point where you're going to the judicial system. But I'm a little jaded, so.
No, I just going to say real quick, because I agree, Joe, and I also think that if the courts do have that kind of conflict of interest, which is on the surface here almost unavoidably apparent, but right. I think that the court systems, when it comes to child custody, and maybe not just custody, but so much more than just the custody and the financial well-being and things like that. But what about the mental health? What about more engagement into co-parenting?
Right.
I really think the educational exposure needs to really broaden. It needs to broaden well before with our young kids. It needs to broaden before marriage. It needs to be broadened if a divorce is unavoidable, and all throughout. I mean, it's such a part of our American society, unfortunately, and it just keeps perpetuating, and it just keeps going and growing. Yeah, actually, and it's going to grow and get worse now that all these little ripple effects, like marriage rates falling and birth rates falling and things like that. So I do think it matters. I think the folks that kind of take a laissez-faire approach to it are not going to be happy not too many years down the road,
Right.
you know, and I don't know if it's a denial thing or what. I also don't think I'm embellishing, or I don't think I'm overreacting at all. I think it's a very natural trend or a very real, not natural. I think it's a very real trend that's going on. And I think there are some forces out there that are very intentful about pushing it that way.
100%.
I think there's an analogy. It's like if you were told you could go and get your dream car and you just found it and you're like, oh my God, and you come home, you're so excited about this car. It's the best thing ever. And I'm like, whoa, hang on. But what if, you get caught for speeding and it's probably not very safe if you're gonna be like, shut up. Like, this is all I've ever wanted. Like, you can't tell people about the downfalls of marriage and divorce when they're already on the way to getting married. Like, to me, because you found the person you love, it's like, it's emotional. You want to be with them and so on. So I think the time you have to catch kids is kids in school. I mean, we teach them sex education pretty young. When they're not
teaching geometry. Why are they teaching geometry?
Well, now apparently
we're not teaching them relationship education and what that looks like. So it's almost like you got to dial it in 3 times before they get to that point. So there's an awareness of it. Like who in the class here has got parents that are divorced? I'm pretty sure 75% of the kids' hands are going to go up. It's like, okay, so you all know what that is. There's a discussion to be had there about what that looks like, what it feels like, whether it's good, whether it's bad, how they think things could be done differently, how it's making them feel about, do they ever want to get married? I mean, those conversations can be had early on, I believe. And then the second round of that is just in the same way that sex education is taught. Like when they're young, these are the parts of the body, and this is what might happen to you as a boy or a girl. And then a couple of years later, okay, so now you might get in a relationship with a boy or a girl, and this is or actually anybody right now, because it's not just a boy or a girl anymore, it's everybody. But like, that's all right out there. So why are we not doing the same with a relationship? And then like the third round is, okay, so now you're with someone and you're probably not in school anymore, but if you're contemplating getting married or getting engaged, then just like you would enter a job or a service contract or, starting up a business with someone, or even signing up and getting a bank account, there is a contract in place. Like, these are the rules. This is how it works. This is what we require from you. And this is what, you will get from me in return. If there was something like that was legal, or if it was a legal requirement before you got married, people wouldn't jump into getting married so fast, because like I said, you can jump into getting married straight away, but to get out of that, then you're talking like years of like loss of everything. So we should be warned. It's buyer beware, I think. Personally, that's just my own point of view on that.
No, I agree with you. And I also think that if we have a society that embraces the teaching our kids of virtues, values, personal responsibility, and I'm talking across every culture, race, dynamic imaginable. And I'd love, and I'm, if someone would want to talk to me about how I'm not looking at that right, I'm all ears. I wouldn't even be argumentative. It just, I'm just a logical guy thinking, if we have our kids at very young ages learning this, it's part of a society of general respect, excuse me, then when it does come time for marriage, and I'm not necessarily suggesting any kind of government, anything, a board or this or that or whatever.
Right.
I just say, if anything, I don't want him even looking at me, but or talking to us. Just do what we say. You're our government. Shut up, sit down. But again, if we are forcing people to do things, then in that same context, why couldn't we put a force on the front side of it and proactively? And I'd suggest that when people go to get married, they'd be very prepared to have that conversation about, oh, of course, we don't want the relationship to end, but if it did, we want to talk about these potential things now where we're respecting each other rather than never talking about these things.
Right.
And only talking about it in the heat of battle and everything. And I heard this once compared to making end of life plans. A gal came in locally to Las Vegas to a networking group. This was 10 years ago, and she was talking about end of life planning. And it was one of the greatest, most impactful hour-long presentations I'd ever heard. It was undeniable facts, the stories that she was telling about family. Someone would unfortunately pass away in the family, maybe a matriarch or a patriarch, and the assets or sentimental items. It just doesn't even have to be surrounded by a ton of money. Just sentimental items or wishes or things like that. If it's not discussed, the stress level, the destruction, the division, she said, is worse than divorce.
That's
it
terrible.
it really can be. But she said the dynamic of the two processes of preparation and planning couldn't be more of the same. And I tended to agree with her,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I've seen it in my career too. Just, I've, as an advisor helping people with finances, part of what I do is hand them off to the attorney to go get, their trusts and wills all done so that they can avoid as much of that as they can. But when it isn't done, it can be absolutely brutal. It can tear families apart, and it can be emotionally traumatic for all parties involved. And so I think planning that kind of, at least discussing what sorts of things would lead to, like, some people might be like, oh, if she cheats on me, it's no big deal. Whereas other people would be like, if I ever get cheated on, you're done. Like, there's no like second chance. So if you're having those kinds of conversations as a newly or about to get married person, and you're just being super clear about, like, here's my expectations. Like, I'm never going to dust. Like, my thing is I'm never going to dust or whatever, that's only kind of true. But, but if you've got lines in the sand about, like, I'm really not good at cooking, but I'm awesome at doing dishes, like, work that kind of stuff out so it doesn't create a problem. Right. And so having as much of that discussion beforehand, all those values and all those little snags that can get you, I totally agree, would be great.
And there's so much of this follow the money. Like so many issues really can include that focus, that reality, follow the money. So we talk about a trust attorney. A trust attorney goes out and very much promotes and talks about the value of protecting oneself and preparing. Well, there's money in that. How could we create a vehicle as a nation, or just the three of us here on the phone? We'd be billionaires. How do we create this not equitable, that's the wrong word. How do we create this almost a career field, a position out of the proactive promotion of now I'm not saying prenup, because that already exists. You might say, oh, well, everything you're talking about, Jeff, it exists in a prenup. No, I would disagree with that. A prenup seems very asset, and I don't know anything about a prenup. I've never had one. I've never drawn one up, but I would say that that's very asset driven and not very.
How many broke people do you know that are married that have a prenup, right? I mean, like, just, you don't hear about that, right? So
good point. Yeah. So do we create for lack of a better word, an expansion on the prenup that isn't just a prenup right when someone goes into meets, but somebody already knows what that expansion is? And I realize I just made that up, but they realize that what that expansion of the prenup is, because that's what our society talks about instead of competition, division, attitude, just a real. There's another word besides narcissistic. It's downright bad attitude. I'm for a lack of words here, but it's toxic, baiting, challenging, threatening, bullying at times, you know. So I just think I know this is a vague, ambiguous way to say it, but there are just so many better ways, so many sets of better ways to doing it the way we're doing it now. And I think the responsibility is on us. Yep. Here I say and kind of complain, hey, you know, we're just going the wrong directions and we can do it better. Well, at the same time, the responsibility, I think, really is on us. I don't think it's on the state. I don't think we can ever count on social media and or entertainment on its own to somehow align
that doesn't
with
sell,
messaging.
Right? Or that doesn't get eyeballs.
No,
right?
You're right. It doesn't,
or
and we're not, and we're not going to get the cell phone companies and technology to include operational manuals. They have mechanical operational manuals, but they don't have that manual that goes along with here are the risks, here's the downside, here are all the other things in life that should go with your routines and lifestyles and things like that. And so yeah, it's a set of challenges, you know, it really is. And from, you know, Joe, from a financial point of view, you were kind of hitting on the end of life planning and moving to the trust attorneys. And I just thought of this, what sort of, do you see a lot of prenups involved with finances coming in, or?
No, I'm not in that market. I don't see a lot of prenups. And I don't know that they would necessarily help, because you can do some of that stuff just with the way that you set up some of the accounts and so forth. Like in my market, right? But like you could almost, Kirstey was talking about having, like, if you entered into a business agreement with someone or started a partnership in a business, you'd have upfront contracts, you'd have agreements. Like, you're going to be the accountant, I'm going to be the marketing, you're going to be sales. You're going to have different people that you're not going to just wing it and say, like, you know. And so I think you could almost lean on the older generations that have had successful marriages and just go out and interview dozens and dozens and dozens of different ones that are religious, ones that aren't religious, ones that have made a lot of money, ones that are broke, different religion, different ethnicities, different altogether situations. And the core thing is that they've all been able to navigate marriage over a lifetime and be able to make it work. And so interviewing those people, and maybe even have them be the ones that say, hey kid, we're doing a video and we're going to go on and do like a documentary on, like, how do you have a successful marriage? And you just interview all these people, and then the kids watch this and go, you know, you run into money stuff, you run into religious stuff, you run into all the overtones, education. Like, are you someone who's like really stringent about rules, or are you someone that's kind of loosey-goosey and not so strict? Like, you could probably uncover so many techniques that don't go into like any kind of like paperwork, but it's an honor. Like, just in honor, I would want to make sure that I'm, as a respectable human being, I would want to make sure that I'm honoring my commitments, and maybe some of it's written down, some of it's, but I think that's where I think you have to go into the whole thing with integrity and with honor, and you could get so much wisdom from something like that would really make you aware of what I would imagine. There's got to be common themes, and from what I've seen, you know, a lot of it's communication, you know, shared values, and sadly, money does come into it. So if you can kind of get to a happy place financially, whatever that might be, some people being not having a lot of money but not having a lot of responsibility, that's their happy place. Other people super stressed out with lots of work but make tons of money. Like, nobody's saying what's right or wrong, but if the two people agree to it and they can honor each other's opinions, then I think that's where success comes from. You know, like, so just some general thoughts there.
No, 100%. And when you talk about this $50 billion industry, annual industry in North America, being the family law industry, can you imagine taking $50 million and investing into the proactive success, pushing success for all the right reasons, with all of the understandings of freedom? We're not looking to corral everyone into one frame of thought. I think it does come with an awful lot of exception and desired inclusion for everybody, you know. And I kind of lost my train there for a second. You were talking about, well, we're like broadening there's so many discussions here, but when it gets back into that prenup arena, let's call it that discussion of everything, and you're talking about bringing the classes in to show. Initially, I might think, oh wow, okay, tell all these stories about all the warning signs and scare the holy bejesus out of kids. So I think that right. It's like
when you give them that baby to take home that cries for like 3 days and they have to feed it and change it, and they're like, I don't want to get pregnant. I never want to have a baby. It's that kind of thing. It's like that. I don't in California,
back in the 80s and 90s, and they still may do. They made this film called Red Asphalt, and it was a film about drunk driving.
I think I saw that.
Joe immediately just admitted the first time he got a ticket. That's the movie he saw. I did too, Joe. But and I'm not saying those are bad. Those are total realities. Yes. Let's share those. But I do think it has to come along with what you said about let's go and get a bunch of very successful families from about every type of different dynamic and economic class, every zip code you could think of, and have them talk about how all of those big red apparent flags and all those pitfalls and all those things are there no matter what you try to do. They're there. It's not like you can fully control avoiding them. I think the best is to be prepared when they happen. I think we've got to get better at recognizing green flags and going for those, because we're all very easily scared. We're all very cynical. We're all very doubtful. Yeah. And it's easy to focus on the negative and the story of whatever it is that we've been through and the story in our heads. I think when you learn to recognize green flags, that takes courage, because that requires a further discussion to check, is this real? Is that thing? So you're going in and investigating it more. What does healthy look like? I mean, think about all and what's more impactful, watching that movie that was about McDonald's and sugar? I can't remember what it was called now. It was like
Super Size Me.
Yeah, when that came out, everyone freaked out, right? Because they were like, oh, we're eating this? Oh my God. And, everyone went crazy over that. But then, that's great. That's scary. But then what do you eat instead? And so that's where all the education comes in about, well, you need to eat your food groups and you need to do this, you need to do that. It's important. I think the red flags are awesome for scaring people. But just because somebody says something that you think, oh my God, that was on that red flag video, I've got to leave that situation immediately. It's like, well, hold up. This is where the listening comes in. This is where you have to start seeking to understand, is it actually that? Or am I just scared because it sounds like something from before? And if I've been really traumatized, everything's going to sound like a panic attack, right? So I think it is really important that we can stick around long enough to figure out if something is a green flag or not, but just recognize the red ones,
That's a great point. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. Let's look out for the green flags. Let's start focusing on all the things. Let's be very aware of all of the distractions that are going on every day. And they're very tangible. You can touch them. They are. Some of them aren't. Like some of the society, social media, some of those interpretations and things that we assume and or let guide us by the pressures or the apparent standards of social media, right? Which are completely fabricated and everything. So I think it's the distractions that are taking us away from those green flags, or even being able to see those green flags. That's a great, I will stew on that. I'll marinate on that one for a while. I know I will. I'm glad you say it, because it's right. Follow the green flags. I'm going to go get a tattoo. Follow the green flag. But, Joe, and real quick, Joe, you have I don't know if I can call it a curriculum or kind of something that you're working on there in regards to the family and the family unit.
I don't have a curriculum. We have, what are you asking, just in our relationship, or what more specifically?
No, more so I thought Kirstey had, and I may be totally wrong. I thought Kirstey had I know Kirstey's, got her business and everything like that on the divorce coaching side. And I thought she had said that you were also working on something kind of family related. If not, I must have been dreaming.
No, I do just general. I'm working with a lot of folks just right now with a lot of what's going on with banking and what's going on with a lot of the sort of economic turmoil. I do a lot with that.
Sure.
But specifically to like a curriculum for the family, not just general planning to help with finances. I do, but nothing that's like a book or a course or anything like that.
Gotcha. More so.
Not yet, anyway. But now you've given me some ideas.
That's right. Do it. I mean, and you mentioned something. I believe I heard Dave Ramsey once say that the real key to discussing some of the key parameters are finance, religion, politics, and how to raise kids. Yeah. Those four in particular. Yeah. So no, I think you're hitting on it, and
there's no right or wrong answer with any of that, right? It's just like you just have to find someone that you're aligned with, because if you're way over here and they're way over there, then you're just starting with some challenges right off the bat, right? So
I think what makes you really unique in what you do is that because you are so relationship focused, and because of the stuff that we've worked on in terms of like where I'm going with now, you incorporate that in your, like when you use the example earlier on, like if you have a couple and they're both in very different places in terms of their risk averseness with certain things, is that is like can be a major issue. But because of the way that you've learned to talk to people and learn to listen and using that structure to get information out, I think that makes you very different from a lot of other financial people who are just purely focused on systems and numbers and stuff like that. Like you have a completely different effect on people, I think, because you're very relationship focused within your finance.
I have one of those pendulums and I just go look very deeply. No.
To the men or the women?
Yeah.
Right,
No, she's right. The relationship is the whole thing. The tools are the tools. Yeah. Financial tools are pretty, there's not a lot of secret squirrel. I mean, we all have pretty much access to the same financial tools. It's how they're implemented and then who it is that you're working with to kind of make sure that they understand what the goals you have are being met, not their goals, right? So just sort of having that put your client's first mindset and the relationship, not only between the couple or the client, but then also my relationship with them, that we have open, honest communication. And sometimes it's not easy to tell them you're not going to retire next year, but being able to say that in a way that's like, hey, I love you, I got your back, but let's talk through this, Yeah. So yeah, I suppose you're probably right with all that. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that we'll do have some more time on here, some recorded podcasts of maybe multiple different types. When you guys are up in Las Vegas, I look very much forward to. I mean, Phoenix isn't that far away. Marianne and I should head on down there and hang with you guys. We were down in the Phoenix area in Scottsdale a couple of different times last year. So I really like the area. I'm not an expert at it, but really nice area and stuff like that. And then Kirstey, real quick here, your free videos and tips online, just some of the notes that we were sharing earlier. What's the best way to get to your content? And I'd like to steer some of those people there. And then we'll announce here in the next couple of weeks, you and what I'd like to do is definitely have you on and have you really take the lead, go down some really core components of your support and training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook, and I am pretty much daily posting just 2-minute video or 1-minute videos actually, and like tips, just things that are based on how to connect with yourself, things that you can do that kind of allow you to be in control of your emotions so you don't get triggered, so you can communicate better, so you can learn to, seek to understand, you can hear other people, and basically get out of your own crap that stops you getting in the way of problems you're trying to solve. So whether it's at work, with your kids, with your spouse, whatever, that's what I focus on, is helping people to understand a really simple way of being able to control all that stuff that's inside so that they can get the best out of their relationships. And so I post a lot of free videos and tips, and that's so at Kirstey Jane on Instagram. spelt my name with an E on there. It's on the screen. So Kirstey, and then Jane, Jane. And that's on Instagram and also on Facebook too by the same name. Everything goes on there. So, yeah.
No, everyone, watching and listening. I have had some just great comments from Kirstey. I'll give you a little kudos here. In the Las Vegas area down here, what I'm doing is relatively new. This Deadbeat Chronicles podcast is relatively new. There's been a lot of energy that anytime you start something brand new, usually the attention you're getting is from the people that already know you.
Right.
And we've had a lot of our friends really make a lot of comments. We had the launch for the Deadbeat Chronicles podcast and the nonprofit, the Room Redux Nevada. We did that double launch, and we had a couple of the recordings playing in different areas and stuff like that. And some people made some really positive comments about our dialogue going back and forth, Kirstey, you and I, and then just a lot of the things that you had to say just seemed, of course, very logical. And let's keep it up. Yeah, guys, let's keep it up. I really, really would. Joe, again, pleasure to meet you on video here. And I'd love to continue it on. I kept you guys well past an hour, like I promised. So I'm sorry, you probably need to getting on and taking care of the kids and cooking some dinner yourselves. But I very much appreciate you guys. And I look forward to talking with you again very soon. And again, guys, jump on and take a look at Kirstey Jane's content. It is incredibly supportive and valuable. And I definitely hope it gets you through some struggles here and there. I know it will. So guys, I'll talk to you very, very soon. And we'll see if we can't continue this on and improve the quality of the American family.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.